Next item on the agenda is development agreement for Emery Station West.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Michael Gina, Assistant City Attorney. I'm here tonight to present the development agreement, the proposed development agreement between Wareham Development and the City regarding the Emery Station West and Heritage Square Garage. What you're going to be asked to do tonight is make a recommendation to the City Council to adopt an ordinance authorizing the City Manager to enter into the development agreement with the developer. So again, the action that you'll be asked to take tonight is to make the required findings and make a recommendation to the Council. Let me give you a little background about the project and where the project is located. The project consists of two parcels, the so-called mound site and the Heritage Square parking lot. To orient you, north is the top of the screen there. Amtrak station is located here. The Amtrak bridge connecting to the pedestrian bridge connecting to the marketplace is here. And Horton Street is running north-south here. So the mound site is located directly north of the Amtrak station. It was previously used by Westinghouse to repair electrical transformers, and as a result of its historic industrial use, it's heavily contaminated with the contaminants that are listed here on the slide. The site is the subject of an EPA consent agreement where Westinghouse, who is the underlying fee owner, was required to place to contain the soils by putting in a trench, or essentially a coffin, surrounding the contaminants and then capping it with the cap that's there now, and then putting the asphalt on top of it. So right now, the consent agreement is highly constrained in terms of the uses that could be used on that site while those contaminants are still in the soil. Currently, the use of site is limited essentially to the surface parking lot that you see now. The proposal is to redevelop both the mound site and the Heritage Square site together in two pieces. Essentially, the Emery Station, what's called the Emery Station West Building, and the Heritage Square parking lot. The Emery Station West piece will be a building of approximately 248,300 square feet. Its uses will be office and lab space, and it'll be constructed as a 7-story building on top of a 2-story podium. The podium will house 148 parking spaces, which will include 125 parking spaces, public parking spaces, which will be used to service the Amtrak station adjacent to it. The podium will also contain 4 bus bays, also for use in conjunction with the Amtrak station adjacent to it, and that will accommodate the current uses of the Amtrak station, namely the buses that transport folks from the Amtrak station to San Francisco, and also the public parking spaces which are currently used on the mound site. In addition, the Emery Station West building will house or will have 2,400 square feet of ground level commercial space with retail and transit oriented functions. There will also be a plaza located between the building and the Amtrak station, as well as an open plaza on the upper podium level of the building that would connect with the existing pedestrian bridge. The Heritage Square parking structure characteristics are shown on the slide there. It is essentially will be used to serve the parking needs of the Emery Station West building. The parking spaces will all be private spaces. There will also be 3,620 square feet of commercial uses that will be fronting Horton Street. Here's the proposed site plan. So Horton Street is here, Hollis Street is up here, the Amtrak station is here, and we've got the Emery Station West Building here, located on the mound site, and the Heritage Square garage here. You see the highlights of the various characteristics that I pointed out. I will note that this is the public plaza between the Amtrak station and the Emery Station West Building. The improvements will also include widening of the platform by approximately 4 feet, as well as widening the sidewalk on Horton Street. As part of the approvals that were granted, which I'll get into in just a minute, the City Council had authorized the removal of 7 street trees. These are just some quick renderings of what the project this is the view of the Emery Station West building from the post office, view of the building from Horton Street. This is a view of the Heritage Square garage. So let me go into some background about what the city has done on the project up to this point. The Planning Commission considered this project back in January of 2010. At that time, there were 6 commissioners that were present for that hearing. Commissioner Donaldson had an excused absence that night. The Commission approved the ISMND on a 6-0 vote, but deadlocked 3-3 on the actual approvals. There had been some questions about who had voted and where, and so the slide shows how the commissioners voted. The issues that were discussed that night at that hearing included height, massing, and use of the public plaza. Given the 3-3 vote, the result was that there was no action taken by the Commission on the application that evening. And therefore, the City Council approved the project to itself and subsequently approved the project on appeal in February 2010 on a 4-1 vote, with Councilmember West voting no. As a result, the project was approved. I wanted to highlight what the public improvements of the project were, including the 125 parking spaces and a 2-level podium, the bus bays, and the open plaza. I also want to emphasize that it is a reuse of the mound site, which again is a highly contaminated site, which was essentially just a surface parking lot, and you'd have this building with all of this active use that goes along with it. Following the project approval in February 2010, the applicant asked for an extension of the approvals for an additional 2 years, and those approvals are currently valid until February of 2014. I also wanted to point out to the Commission ordinance, the ordinance that's listed here on the slide. The City Council had adopted this ordinance in 2010 in recognition that economic conditions at the time might prevent certain projects which had been approved from proceeding. In order to accommodate those projects and the current economic conditions, given at the time of the approval, the City Council adopted this ordinance which allowed certain projects, including this project, to apply for extension of approvals beyond the usual extension period for a total of up to 5 years from the original approval date. Since the project was originally approved in 2010, 5 years from that would allow the applicant to apply for approvals up to February of 2015. The applicant would have to come to the City Council and ask for those approvals. And they're not necessarily guaranteed, but that is an option that's available. So currently, the project approvals will expire in February of 2014, unless the development agreement is approved. Why the need for the development agreement? Essentially to secure funding for the project. Part of the funding that was pledged to the project were former redevelopment agency funds. The redevelopment agency had pledged $4.2 million for the public improvements to go towards the construction of the bus bays, the parking spaces, and the public plaza. Those former redevelopment agency funds are currently the subject of litigation between the successor agency and the State Department of Finance. The successor agency had prevailed at the trial level, which would have allowed the funds to be be used towards this project. However, the State Department of Finance has appealed the trial court's decision, and that case is currently on appeal now. It's anticipated that the appeal process will probably take longer than the current life of the entitlements beyond the 2014 period. And so in order to preserve those entitlements and allow for this project to proceed, including the use of the former redevelopment agency funds, staff is recommending that a development agreement be adopted in order to vest the land use approvals, allow the litigation to be resolved, and allow the project to be built as approved by the council. Quickly, the terms of the agreement: it's a 5-year term. The land use approvals that were approved by the project would be vested for that period, and the developer would be obliged to pay the building fees that would be applicable at the time that the developer pulled the permits. In terms of the procedure, as I indicated, the City Council will authorize the entry of the development agreement by ordinance after they receive a recommendation from the Planning Commission. In order to adopt the ordinance, the City Council and the Planning Commission are asked to make 2 findings. Consistent with the development agreement. First, that the development agreement itself is consistent with the general plan, and also that the development agreement is in the public interest. And staff believes that these findings can be made. Regarding the general plan, staff recommends that the goals and the policies that are listed on your screen compared with the uses that are proposed, support the general plan goals and policies. The project will add laboratory, office space, ground floor commercial, other transit-oriented uses that will create a mix of uses and a range of economic activity. The public improvements that will be provided by the project will also support the transit uses that are called for in the general plan policy indicated here. Therefore, the staff is recommending that the Planning Commission open the public hearing, take public comment, and then make the required findings, which I just outlined, and recommend that the City Council approve the development agreement. I'm here to answer any questions. Jeff Sears of Wareham is also here to answer questions as well, if you have any questions. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's an appropriate question to ask or not, but it says in the staff report that there's a long-term lease agreement. That lease agreement is between Wareham Development and the property owner?
Yes, there's a lease agreement between Wareham and let me get to the slide, and Westinghouse, who is the underlying fee owner of the mound site.
And long-term means like 99 years?
Yes.
So if this project doesn't go through, in order for the city to get another project that, say, Wareham didn't want to develop, we'd have to sublease, the new developer would have to sublease from Wareham, even if that was legal?
Well, there is currently a sublease between Wareham. So Wareham Wareham leases the mound site from Westinghouse. the city then subleases the mound site from Wareham in order to accommodate the 125 parking spaces which serve the Amtrak station. If this project does not happen, then you'll essentially have the current conditions that you have now, which is the surface parking lot.
It's undesirable.
Which is undesirable, which is on top of a highly contaminated site.
All right. Okay. So what I'm interested in is what happens to the public improvements under the agreement if the city should lose its legal battles for the $4.2 million. If, say, we lose that, we don't have that money, do we lose the public improvements, or does this development agreement still hold that those have to be included?
Well, the development agreement, all the development agreement does is that it preserves the approvals that were granted by the city council. So if the development agreement, if the state prevails ultimately and we are not able to use the former redevelopment agency funds for this project, then the developer can still build the project, but then there will be a real question as to whether or not they would want to proceed without that funding source available.
And if they decide not to pursue those, they can go ahead with
I mean,
the project?
it's just like any other developer that gains approvals for a project but decides not to build it for any number of reasons. This
If
would
they
be
do
no,
choose
this
to
would
build it,
be
they
no
have-
different.
But if they choose to build, they have to build it with these public improvements?
Yes, that's right. Yes, all of the obligations that the developer has that were included in those conditions of approval with the original approvals will continue to apply through the development agreement.
Okay. And I think I was reading about a development agreement in Walnut Creek with the Broadway Plaza, and that developer was asking that the fees be frozen for 20 years. So I'm happy to see in this development agreement that when they go forward with the project, it will be in the dollars of that day.
Yes.
So I think that's very key and important that we realize. That's all I have. Thanks.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Open to does the developer wish to say anything?
If you have questions.
Open public session. Any comments from the public? Okay. Oops.
Okay, I would like to correct some possible misconstrued or possibly incorrect statements by the Assistant City Attorney, Mr. Guina. First of all, he made reference to the earlier Planning Commission decision about this project as a, quote, deadlock. And in fact, what it really was, it was a vote of no from this body, because a tie vote is a no vote. So just so everybody here understands, the Planning Commission previously voted no to this project, not a deadlock. And then, of course, there's always the standing question of Mr. Guina recommended that you approve the comment after you take public testimony, which sort of then begs the question, why really have the public testimony if he's already recommending? I mean, it just seems sort of cynical, and I just think it's a bad way to conduct public policy that way. I mean, it essentially is telling us that there's no reason for us to come up here and provide testimony because he's already recommending, regardless of what we say, that he's already recommending that you approve the project. It's just sort of a bit of nastiness, and I don't think we should operate like that. Mr. Guino made reference to the Westinghouse site as being a highly contaminated site, and he's correct. It's highly contaminated, but one thing that everybody here needs to understand, and people watching on television, is after Rich Robbins, the CEO of Wareham, finishes his project with public money, lots of it, millions of it, it's still going to be a highly contaminated site. Right now it's entombed. The contaminants cannot move. They are entombed permanently. And when we're finished with giving money for this project, it will still be entombed. So we get no forward motion as to cleaning up Emeryville with our public money going to the developer for this project. So it's a terrible deal for the public. And then if you look at the supposed benefit, that we get the plaza, which is going to be a classic empty after dark, kind of a cold, sterile public plaza. And then we get the 4 bus bays, which you already have, and essentially that's it. Now, the developer wisely has studied probably Republican memes, and he's calling this project the Transit Center, so it sort of harkens or makes people think that it's maybe sort of public transit friendly. But it's sort of analogous to maybe George W. Bush's Healthy Skies initiative, where it makes you think that, if this passes, we're going to have cleaner air, when in fact, actually, we're going to have dirtier air. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to make transit more difficult, but it's just neutral as to public transit. The 4 bus bays are just a moving of the buses from where they are now over a little bit. There's no real public benefit here, and it's really a scam. It's a waste of the public money, and I don't think you should pass this.
Any further public comment? Close the meeting. We have a motion to approve.
Well, I'd like to say something. In my opinion, I cannot make finding B, and I do not agree that this development, as it's proposed, is in the public interest. I mean, we have 125 parking spaces, although when I went and looked at the lot, there's 220 minus 9 for right next door, having a little mind block, the terraces, and I'm not really certain what the 125 is. In any event, the public parking at this point would probably be reduced, the way I can see it, and this podium park that's may need to be closed off from the public at night for safety reasons, is with no reason to go there night or day, I think is not a public benefit. It's a very...
It ties into the bridge across the railroad tracks.
Sure, it does. And that's about it. It's a walkway through, down a large set of stairs to the Amtrak station and the street. And I don't believe that this is a great public benefit. It's a very tall building. We have all new planning regulations. We've made a whole new general plan, and I don't believe that this project would pass as if it was before us today. And I don't think the design is excellent. I don't think it. I appreciate that there has been a lot of work that's gone into the design, and there has been some public. They've taken public comments and tried to tie them in, and at the same time, I do not think that I can make that finding be that this is serving the best public interest as an actual transit center. I don't think there's much different, except that there will be more parking for the private the private office / biotech spaces, and having that that business in Emeryville is maybe some benefit, but it does not. I cannot make that finding, so that's where I stand.
I have plenty. First of all, I'm in total opposition to what Vanessa's saying. I think the bus bays are a public asset because right now the buses idle outside. They're underneath the terraces homes, and they idle all day. I try to cut through that parking lot to get into the train station. They block the bike path. I can't get in there. So I think moving those into a controlled environment where they are away from people's homes is, number one, that in itself is worth this project. Number two, that public plaza will be bigger. It will be more friendly. I cross that thing every time I go to Emeryville Advanced Imaging. The physical therapist is there. I used to go to the dentist over in Heritage Square. And anytime I go to any of the restaurants on Hollis, I cross through there. The bridge connection now is horrible. It is obscene, it's disgusting, it's dirty. I think once that bridge connects to the plaza and the park up there, and they have security there, it's going to be a much safer place. So I think that's the third thing that makes that a public benefit. The mixed use of the retail along Hollis Street, there's no retail there now. It's all parking or It's the train station, and I've had several family members come over on that train, and I use the train. So I find that there are a lot of public benefits, and I think, and when you talk about how big this building is, it's a story taller than the marketplace, 1 story. And if I'm not mistaken, I think our new regulations of the planning, or the general plan, allow for this building. I don't think that, is that right, Charlie?
Just to clarify, this project was approved under our current general plan.
Right.
It was approved in 2010. The general plan was adopted in October 2009. In fact, it was, I think, the first project that was approved under the general plan. It was approved under the interim zoning regulations, so it was not approved under the current planning regulations, but it was approved under the current general plan.
And then the part about it is one of the last EPA Superfund sites in the city. I think taking out 90% of that contamination is going to serve us far better than leaving it there, because what's holding it is 1980s technology. Do we know it is a Superfund site?
They're not taking anything out, though.
I think that's something that needs to be clarified
Yeah.
in the presentation.
Is there going to be any
what's
site
going to actually
remediation?
happen to the contaminants that are there. So I think that question needs to be answered.
Someone can answer, is there going to be site remediation?
Maybe Michael.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Sears with Wareham Development. So there will be a remediation that we estimate is going to cost $7.5 to $10 million and take away a substantial amount of the contamination. I don't know that almost any abatement anywhere takes away everything, but the way it's contaminated now, it can't be developed with anything but a surface parking lot. So what this does is take a tremendous amount away, enough away that EPA no longer is going to be the lead agency, and they're going to defer down to DTSC, who's still a very capable agency, but it's sort of a regulatory measure of the severity of the thing. EPA says, you'll take away all the stuff that we're the regulator of, the worst stuff, basically, and the residual stuff DTSC's in charge of, we'll all feel good, we'll hand it over to DTSC, and the EPA will effectively step away. So improvement can go on the site. The regulators now allow the project to sit on there because so much has been taken away. Does that answer your question?
The cap's going to be broken, and you're going to be taking a large portion of the soil away? Is that?
Yeah, 5, 6, 7 feet. And maybe there are some places where contamination is more severe, and we may have to chase it down some. I mean, that's all. There's sort of a 5 years worth of environmental analysis that was done to get the regulatory approval. Both EPA and DTSC approved that plan.
So while you're still there, you can answer the question. So if this goes through, and if we win the appeal and retain the $4.2 million, is it possible that Wareham can start this project before the expiration of the development agreement? Say 3 years, 4 years?
That's what we hope. And, you know, we wish this issue hadn't been appealed by the state. But it has been, and the courts are not under our control, they're not under the city attorney's control. It would be great if it's resolved sooner.
Any further
I'm
comment?
done.
I just want to point out a couple of things. I wanted to point out that the development agreement does require the developer to pay the building and impact fees in place at the time that they pull their permits, which is, if not unusual, it's at least notable. Development agreements aren't always written that way. And also, just for the benefit of everyone here tonight, I wanted to address something that was said earlier. As far as the relationship sort of between the staff recommendation and public comment, the staff always makes a recommendation for us when we're given public hearing items. That's sort of their role, is to work with the applicants to refine the projects and to make the best project that they can, and then to make a recommendation to us. It doesn't mean at all that we don't welcome public comment. In fact, it's encouraged, and we hope that you're all here to to make comments, and we, you know, we want to hear those, and we're glad that you're here. And we take all of those things into consideration when we come to our decision. So I just wanted to say that for the benefit of the public.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've seen vacant lots, watched vacant lots sit there, and all of a sudden construction started and I was excited to see what was going to get built, only to find out that what got built was basically something that was kind of encapsulated in time because it had been extended and extended too long. And without knowing a whole lot about this project and kind of only seeing some elevations of it, just on initial view of it, I definitely would, I would think that there are some improvements that I would propose, and to make it more of a community asset. And so I just have a hard time, you know, I imagine having a hard time approving this as it is, so that something that was designed 3+ years ago could be built 5 years from now, when hopefully, I mean, Emeryville's, you know, obviously growing and changing, and I think our standards are increasing by the day, by the year. So I don't know. I just have some concerns about kind of freezing that.
Marie, do you have any comment?
So just with regard to the second finding that we need to make with regard to the agreement being within the best interest of the public, I do think that having a plaza would be a benefit in terms of linking the services that are on the west side of the tracks, and in particular the residential developments there. And I think you were mentioning, Stephen, you know, that you use that as a link to the eastern side, if you will, of the railroad tracks. So I do see that being as a public benefit. I am concerned with what's going to happen with regard to the cleanup of the site. It just doesn't seem very clear that anything is actually going to happen, especially given the scale of the cost involved. And it seems that with the monies that are available, it's nowhere near close to being able to address that situation. So is that within the interest of the public? And I think it makes it, for me, very difficult to make that finding.
I don't believe we get into economic questions, but you can.
Just to clarify, so when, so as Jeff had indicated, when this item will go to the City Council for their consideration, the development agreement, staff will also be bringing concurrent agreements relative to this project, including a remediation agreement that will address the remediation of the site that he had indicated in his comments to you. Those monies are independent of the $4.2 million that I had mentioned here. The $4.2 million of successor agency funds is strictly going towards the public improvements, the bus bays, the public parking, the public plaza.
Well, I was involved in this project for several years when it went through many study sessions and compromises and adjustments, and I believe it's a great solution, and it's never going to meet everyone's standards, but it's now or never, and I would go for it. Do we have a motion?
I would motion approval of the resolution.
I'll second that. Call the roll.
All right. On the motion, Commissioner Gunkel,
Nay.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Kummerly,
No.
Commissioner Tan,
I'm going to abstain.
Vice Chair Moss,
I will abstain also.
And Chair Cardoza.
Yes.
All right, well, the abstentions don't count in the vote total, so we have 4 votes, 2 ayes, 2 noes, so there is no recommendation going forward to the City Council.
Once again.
We will report your vote to the council.
Next item on the agenda is a study session, Sherman-Williams Urban Village, and I am going to recuse myself and turn over the meeting to...
Might we want to take a break real quick? Does anyone want to take a break before we get into this?
A little restroom break would be
Okay.
wonderful. Thank you.
It's already up in the upper left, but we need to delete that.